Oh, look at that.
Mhm. All right. So, welcome to Podcast Guest Success Blueprint. All right. So, we're talking all about all the things that you need to do to become a fabulous guest on podcasts. I'm going to bring it up on my screen here. There we go. A little bit about our podcast success blueprint. So, the goal of today is to go through these 5 phases with you, let you know what the 5 phases are, how you can become a great guest, how you can get your message out there in the world in a bigger way, and how you can do it in a way that's not a huge waste of time. And so that's what I'm finding. A lot of people are going out there and just getting on shows, and it's awesome. But if you're not getting on the right shows, you're not saying the right things, and you're not leading them back to the right place, then it's a total waste of your time. And you're not going to see a return and any results on going out there and being on these amazing podcasts. If you do it right and you go into the right shows that are super aligned with your audience and you say things that compel that audience to come over and be like, "Whoa, you're my coach," or "You're my person." And then you give them an opportunity to opt in to come in into your world and learn more about you, then you have a winning formula for something that can transform your business. We have something coming up this year in 2023, which we'll share with you guys a little bit later on in this call. And it's called the 100 Podcast Challenge. And we're challenging a podcast guests to get on 100 shows in 2023. And if you got on, by our calculations, if you got on 100 shows in 2023, that's 2 a week. So that's pretty manageable. And if you were to do that over the course of 2023, your business would be completely transformed from what it is today to what it is in the end of 2023. And that's just because of 100 shows of the average podcast has about, I don't know, a couple hundred listeners per episode, and you're going on 100 shows. That's amplifying your message out to a whole lot of people. So let's just say on average, there's 1,000 listeners on each podcast, and you're getting on 100 shows. That's 100,000 people that are hearing your message and coming back into your world over the course of a year. I think, would you guys agree that that would make a big difference in your business?
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. So, but we want to make sure that you're getting on the right stages, you're getting in front of the right people, and then it's aligned with your message. So, I'm just going to go over a high level of the 5 phases. The first phase is you as the expert. So, what do we need to do to position you as the expert so that when someone's listening, they go, "Yes, you are my person." And then the next phase is the research. So, how do we know what the right shows are to go on? And how do we know that we've got that perfect alignment with that show's audience? And so that we're not wasting our time or we're not speaking to people that aren't speaking our language. And then the third part is getting booked. So once you kind of figure out those two pieces, how do you go about getting on these shows? How do you reach out to them? How do you find them? And how do you connect with them? And then the fourth part is once you go on the shows, once you get booked, how the heck are you going to say the things that you need to say in your interview to then move people to the next level? So, our goal as a podcast guest is to inspire the audience to take action on something. We're going to transform them in a way that they are going to take action. And then what do we do after the interview? So after the interview is done, it's not just a transaction, it's a now part of a relationship of someone that you've made a relationship with the host. Now what do you do after that? All right, so we're going all the way back up to up to the beginning of the phases. And Linda, I saw you had a quick question. Do you want to go ahead and ask that?
I was just going to, you answered it actually.
Okay.
So thank you.
I have a quick question. How long are most podcasts?
Yeah, great question. So podcasts could be 10 minutes long, they could be 40 minutes long, they could be 2 hours long.
Okay.
Really
So
no answer. Yeah.
depends.
Yeah. Depends on the show. Typically, interviews, I would say, are between 30, 45 minutes long. Candy, how long are your podcast interviews?
All right, I had to take myself off mute. Currently, I record about 25 to 30 minutes of content. So by the time I add the intro, outro, whatever, it's 32 to 35 minutes generally.
Yeah, that's about what mine are as well. And there is no right or wrong answer. What we find, like if you're going to be a podcast host, that's a whole different kind of ball game. Whereas if you're the host and you don't have a guest and it's your own solo episode, I would say it's an episode should be as long as you can concisely deliver that one piece of content, that one message in your show. Now, when you have a guest, that's a little bit different because your guest is going to take you on a wild ride and answering all sorts of different questions. So you can't quite get that one concise piece of content like you can when it's a solo show. So it's a different kind of show. And people, I think what you have to think about is where is the audience? Where are the audience when they're listening? Linda, I don't know how, when you listen to your podcast, what you're doing, but when I listen to podcasts, I'm either out for a walk or I'm driving in the car, or I'm usually moving around doing something else while I'm listening. Like when I first started listening, I was on the floor playing games with my son when he was a baby, and I was listening to the podcast in the background, or I was doing dishes, or I was doing something else at the same time. What about you, Linda? When do you listen to your podcasts?
Mostly when I'm driving.
When you're driving, yeah. And during the pandemic, we lost a lot of podcast listeners. We gained a lot of podcasters, but we lost a lot of listeners. And it came down to all those people that listen while they're commuting, don't have a platform now or don't have a time now to listen to us. So it's interesting how that's kind of slowly corrected itself since the pandemic. But during that time, we lost all those drivers. So I know driving is one of the main things. So if you think about all those activities, whether it's walking on the treadmill or walking your dog or any of those things, typically it's in about a 20-minute time frame is about how long people are or how long they're taking to do those kind of activities. So I would say an episode that's around 20 to 30 minutes long is great. But now that's not going to say that if they go out for a 15-minute walk and your episode's 45 minutes long, doesn't mean that the next time they go out for a walk or the next time they turn on their phone again, it's not going to pick up the same episode. They'll come back to it and keep listening. That's not a problem. So don't need to worry about that as like when you're thinking about the time. And so as a guest, you don't really have control over how long that episode is. I've been on a podcast recently where it was over an hour long, and that felt really long, like really, really long, when right now, like so many episodes are like so short and sweet. And between the 3 podcasts I host, one we do is 10 minutes long. Another one we do is about 30 minutes long, and another one we do is about 20 minutes long. So just depends. I mean, if it's some really juicy content and I'm really enjoying and we have great chemistry with the guests, we'll go longer. So you as the expert, let's start there. So who is your audience? Who do you speak to? And who else has that same audience as you? So anyone want to share who your audience is?
I shared earlier, but again, mine is a small business entrepreneur.
Perfect.
So
yeah,
sometimes I do topics that are not specifically business, that because as entrepreneurs, we still have things in our personal life. So, I've done with like college financial planning and other things like that too, or mindset or whatever. But mainly the topics are generally business related.
Yeah. So Candy, knowing that your business is in the financial realm and it is bookkeeping and finances and things like that, what you want to do is look for specifically those podcasts that have those kind of people that need those kind of services in the audience. So that would be the entrepreneurial kind of shows, small business shows, anything to do with money, finances, like in the realm of like related to business. So those are the types of shows that you're going to look for your particular podcast guesting experience. And so, Suzanne, I'd say for you, you're looking more for shows that are speaking to parents, especially of school-age kids. So like our Blissful Parenting podcast obviously is perfect for that. You also want to be looking for shows that speak to people who want to become certified in your modality of anti-bullying as well. So
That's also like teachers, school administrators, social service administrators, because I offer the program a lot in social services.
Exactly. So now what you want to do then is look for the shows that are related to like education and have teachers in their audience, or those educators in the audience, or social service workers in the audience. So I would pick one that's like kind of the main one. For you, I would say, Suzanne, you have a couple options, right? You, the end user, is the parent that you want to get to. But I think actually for your business model, you want to actually focus on those people that could be certified, right? So you want to focus on the practitioners and the teachers and the administrators instead of the parents, right? So if you, because you have two options with your content, which a lot of us do. So picking the one that's going to like make the most sense and bring you to the people that who are going to be the ones are going to help you make the biggest impact. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So for example, we were working with a doctor right now, and he's like the top doctor on bioidentical hormones in the world. And he wants to enroll more practitioners in his education program, but they're also selling the hormones. So which audience does he speak to on the podcast? And we've identified that his own podcast speaks to the general public, but his podcast for when he's going on as a guest, he's actually speaking to the practitioners and to the doctors. So that's kind of how we've identified his two different strategies. Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I'd like to just say, as an aside, as an educator, if you're talking about bullying, I would cater to parents. Only because I tell you, teachers are so tired of hearing about bullying at school that when they're on their own, they don't want to hear about it anymore. But the parent whose child is getting bullied is really interested in it. That's just what my observance in the field taught me. Just saying.
Right, which is great. And that's really helpful. And then, but knowing that Suzanne has a certification program for administrators and teachers and things, then that makes it a little bit different too. So yeah, I totally agree what you're saying. I think the parents needs to be a big part of your audience. And Suzanne, perhaps when you have your own podcast, it's the parents, or maybe when you're going out on podcasts, you go and talk to the podcast with the parents in the audience. And when it's when it's your own podcast, maybe it's specifically the people that want to be certified in that, the people that are done hearing about it. Exactly what Linda just said, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. So think about, I would split it to two different ways, because you have a kind of a wider opportunity, wider variety of shows that you can be on. Awesome. So if we have a bunch of new people joining us in here, guys, welcome. We're just getting going on our podcast guest success blueprint here. So we've got lots to cover today. We're going through fairly quickly. So we're just talking about our audiences. So first of all, the first phase in actually aligning your message and your mission and your work that you're doing with going out and being a guest on shows and making it the most impactful, and making it not a waste of your time, making it so that you are getting the most out of your podcast guesting experience. We really want to make sure that you have an aligned audience. So you're speaking to the right people. And then next, we're going to show you how to find those right people. Then we're going to show you how to get booked on those shows. And then we're going to show you what to say in those episodes. And also we're going to tell you how to do the follow-up and show you how to do that and keep that going. Now, that's a lot to cover at the next hour and a bit. So bear with me. It's going to feel like a bit of a fire hose, but we have an opportunity at the end that we're going to share with you, obviously, to help you do this in a much better way. And my partner in what we're offering today is on the line. Anastasia, you can give a wave over there. Anastasia is from Winsong Business Services. And her and I joined the forces together to offer you guys the 100 Podcast Challenge. So we're going to show you how to get on 100 podcasts in 2023, which will totally transform your business, if it's the right podcast, and if you're saying the right thing on there, and if you're leading them to the right place. Otherwise, going out there and being on 100 podcasts could be a total waste of your time. So we want to make sure you're doing it right. So back to our phase one. So we're just establishing you as the expert. So in order to establish you as the expert, you need to make sure you're speaking to the right audience. So just making sure you're completely in line with the audience that you are speaking to. So we just kind of did a little bit of work on that, making sure that the audience you're speaking to and your message is going to land on the right ears. So if you are a dog person and you're out there as an expert in dogs and you're speaking to an audience that's full of cat lovers, it's not going to be a message match for that audience, right? It's just not going to work. So we really want to make sure that you have the right audience. How do we really find out who the right audience is on a podcast when we don't know who the listeners are? It's kind of hard, right? So what you can do is assume that the content that the podcaster is delivering on their podcast over time is geared towards a particular audience. And if they're doing a good job with this, you should be able to tell. Like on Candy's podcast, you can definitely tell that she's speaking to business owners and small business owners on her podcast about her business, right? You can tell that by the name of her show. And you can tell that by looking at some of the episodes. So just going to iTunes and taking a look at a particular show and seeing what kind of topics they're talking about, you can pretty much nail what kind of audience they are speaking to. Okay. Next part that's really important is setting up your credibility and making sure that you are positioned to be an expert to speak to this audience. Now, one of the worst things that you can do is go on there and be an expert that just lays down a whole bunch of facts and everything. And what you want to do is be compelling. So you want to show the audience that you have credibility, you've been there, you've got the experience, but you're just a few steps ahead of them. You're not miles ahead and you not know everything. You were exactly where they are right now in the audience at one point in your life. And now you've taken the steps and you've taken the education, the experience, the business now. So now you're able to guide them. So you don't want to be the hero in the podcasting interview. You want to be the guide. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? Anyone need any clarity around that? Yeah, something that actually a lot of podcasts out there get totally wrong. I don't know if you guys know this statistic or not, but there's 2.9 million podcasts out there. But did you know that there's actually only 75% of those shows have made it past episode 7. And the reason they haven't made it past episode 7 is because they're trying to be the expert. And so they're trying to be the expert so that there's only so many things that you can say when you're trying to be the expert on that topic. There's so many different ways that you can say the same thing over and over again, right? Whereas if you're being the guide and you're taking people on a journey to discover more about a particular topic, and you're a few steps ahead of your audience, then that's a magical formula for a show that's not going to run out of content. You're not going to run out of steam. You're not going to get totally bored of the topic. You're going to be able to sustain the podcast, either as a guest or as a podcaster. Okay, so establishing your credibility. If you have a book, make sure you put that somewhere that you have a book. If you've been on a TEDx stage or you've been a TEDx speaker, put that in your information. If you are certified in something, make sure you put that in there. But what you want to make sure is when you're reaching out to shows, and we're going to talk about this in the booking part a little bit more, is that you're not putting it all about, I did this, I do this, I'm this, I'm this. When you're reaching out and trying to get booked on, it's like, your audience is this, your audience needs this, and I can help you with that. Okay, so it's totally positioning yourself in a different way. And you wouldn't believe all the pitches I get every week that are like, me. Like it's all about them. And, I don't really care as a podcast host. What I care about is that what kind of value are you going to provide for my audience? Are you going to make a really great guest by providing tons of great content? Or is it going to be all about you? And I have to tell you, I was really excited about this one podcast interview I did. He was like, at the time, like one of the bigger names that I had on my show. He was a New York Times bestselling author. He was just this cool guy that I met at a mastermind in person. And when I brought him on the show, I was like, what's happening here? Everything out of his mouth was, well, when you buy my book, you'll learn this. Well, when you buy my book, you'll do this. Well, when you get the book, you'll get that. I'm like, hold on a second. This is no content here. Can you just share some content with us? Like, I was so disappointed. I didn't actually publish the episode because I was just, there was just nothing there. It was not content. right? And I know that you guys would never do that, but I just wanted to share that as something that to be aware of, that that does happen, whether you're a podcast host and you have someone come on your show like that, or if you're about to go on a show, just make sure that you're delivering value and content. You want that audience to get so much out of it that they're going to take the next step and work with you. Okay, go ahead, Stan. Yeah.
I find when I'm talking about my topic, people love stories. They love to hear the stories. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. That was where I was leading to, and I never actually said it. So thank you for bringing that. So how you share with the audience about your expertise is through story. And so pulling them into your story of how you got to where you are, because oftentimes that is because you overcame something and now you're teaching it. That's kind of how things work these days, right? We overcome something, we had a problem, now we teach about it. Or now we help others do the same. So just that's perfect. Thank you for saying that. All right. So moving on to the call to action. If you don't have a good call to action, the goal of a call to action from a podcast, there's a couple of different things we want to share here. If you're going to send people to this long website, from the podcast, you're not going to get many people to go over there. You need to make it really easy. You need to remember where most people listen to a podcast is on their phone. So can you get them to text a number to opt into something? Can you get them to go somewhere that is really easy to remember? Can you get them to not leave the type of technology that they're on? So we were in a training call the other day, and it was like brilliant what someone said. Is like, if they're listening to you on a podcast, why would you send them to then go watch a video? Why don't you send them to something that is on audio? And that's so smart, right? Because you're getting them in the listening modality that they clearly already love. So why would you send them somewhere different? So sending them to an audio training, sending them to an audio book, sending them to an audio something is great. It doesn't mean you have to, but you're keeping them in the same modality that they're already liking. Awesome. Yeah. So a few things about being a guest, right? So you want to position yourself as an expert, but being the expert guide. And so there's a few different things that you can do. We like to share, we like to get our experts set up on something that they can showcase and send out. So that looks like either a speaker one sheet or a listing on a directory. I'm just going to let a few more people in here. Got a few more people coming in. Okay, so those things are really easy to do and easy to put all your information together. And I'm going to see if I can pull up mine just quickly so I can show you what that looks like. So you want to share your expertise in a way that's easy for people to see what you're all about, and also easy to see how you can how they can work with you. And we help people put those together. And I'm just going to share with you. If you come and work with us in our 100-day podcast challenge, then you're able to, we're going to create one of these for you. All right, I'm just going to make one of my team members a co-host here so they can help let people in. There's lots of people coming in. So hello, everyone who's just joining us. Come on in. Okay, Mine should be the co-host now. Okay, I'm just about to pull up our podcast guest booking page just so that you guys can see what something looks like. So when someone is a guest, this is kind of how we want to position them. Okay, so here's Amy Riley. She's got a podcast called Courage of a Leader. So we've got her biography here. We've got a picture of her here. We've got her podcast summary of her 4 pillars that she teaches, her free ebook. We've got her domain name, her social media links. We've got a couple of questions, suggested interview topics, questions to ask. And then here's a few of the shows that Amy's been featured on, so people can get a feel of what kind of personality she has and how she kind of works with people. And then we have the opportunity for her to get booked here. So now this is great. This is something that if you're in our 100 podcast challenge, we're going to help you create one of these that you can then use as a link and send out when you're actually reaching out to the shows to get booked. Makes it a lot easier to reach out when you're doing that. All right. So does anyone have any questions? I'm just going to stop there at phase one. So phase one is all about getting your credibility and getting your positioning right, and also aligning with the right audience. So nice to see so many of you guys now. Hi, Anita. I see you. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you. Hi, Candy. All right. And I see lots of you not on camera, but I see your names over there. If you guys have any questions, this is a great chance to ask before we dive into the next part. Anita, go ahead.
Thank you. So I love what you just showed us, that with the one sheet. Could we create something like that and have it on our website or a landing page that we send a link to prospective hosts?
Yeah, absolutely. So we created that in our system.io account. We also had it in Kartra before we moved over to system. If you have ClickFunnels, you can create it on there. You can make a page on your website with all this information in there. Yeah, what's important is that the information is there. The other thing you can do is have a PDF that we can do. What I'll do is I'll send you guys a PDF, or I'll send you guys a link. If we have a quick little break in a few minutes coming up here, I'll get a link for you guys that has like a template from Canva, which you can also do yours in as well. So you can either do it as a PDF or a page on your website, whichever one is easier. Yeah, awesome. Candy, you have a question?
Candy Messer, I assume, because I saw Candy Mozart on here now too.
I know, 2 candies. I love it. And these 2 candies got to share a room in Mexico at our content creation camp together. It was like the candy cane lane. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about doing like a website specifically for, my own podcast. I'm not sure if I'm just going to add another page to a general, website. But either way, actually, do you suggest then having like a page as a guest, like here, if I'm a guest on your show, here's the information, while still promoting like your own podcast? Or do you recommend they not really be together? I guess that would be a question of, if you're doing both, how do you present that information?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. You can put a button on there, like book Candy as a speaker on podcasts, and somewhere in your page. But I would definitely have a page somewhere that links from your podcast to this. Like, hey, you want to have me on as a guest? Here's all my information, right? And this little link on the one I just showed actually leads right to her calendar link. So you can just book it right in there, which is great. All right.
I just asked another question quickly in the chat. How many videos should we include to showcase ourselves? Like 2 or 3 is probably sufficient?
Yeah, great question. So I would say 2 or 3 would be good. Another great thing that if you have, you can do, if like, do you have those like as seen on like a banner? If you can create one like that, like if you've been on the news, or if you've been featured in like a TEDx talk, or if you have been on like a few others, or like, have you been on any other podcasts, right? Then you could put the cover art of those podcasts on your as seen on banner as well, right? So videos, I would say no more than like 3 videos of you talking. And if you don't have any, don't worry about it. You don't need to have videos. The only thing video does is just elevate like their ability to be able to see you in action delivering content, so they can get a feel for your energy when you come on a show. It's not a breaker, not a make it or break it kind of situation for being on a podcast, but it does help when your podcast, you have to think about your podcast hosts are faced with lots of inquiries, people want to be on their show, and it's like, you've got this person who just sent me an email with their bio, and I have this person who sent me this page with all these things on it that I can really get a good feel for them and their content. I'm going to pick that person over the other person to come on my show for sure, especially because I'm like, wow, this is great, and I can know this person will bring value to my audience. And so for those of you who missed it, one of the main things I said earlier today was when you are going on to a podcast, you want to make sure you can deliver tons of content that's valuable to the audience that you're about to speak in front of. That's one of the key components, but giving it in stories and giving it in a space where you entice people, you get them interested in it, and then you move them to the next way of working with you. And that's through your call to action. And your call to action's goal is to deepen the relationship with you, from them hearing you on a podcast and now them maybe seeing you on video, or maybe perhaps it's watching you on a video, or perhaps it's an interactive conversation like we were having here, right? So that's deepening. And in fact, some of you are here because you saw me speak on stage in LA, and I gave this as something that I was offering to come to this training, and now you're here. But this deepens the relationship because now we're having an interactive experience and we're on camera and all that. Perfect. Denise, that's a great question. Denise is asking, when she's filling out speaker application forms and is asked what shows she's been on, she can just put a link to that page. And so actually this page solves a lot of the things that you have to fill out on those stupid forms. And I'm calling them stupid because I get annoyed filling them out, but also as a podcast host, they're super important because all that information then goes into the show notes. So as much as I get annoyed filling them out as a guest, they're so important for the podcast to have all that information. But if they can just go grab that information from that link now that you're putting in there, that's going to be great too, right? All right, moving on. We got lots to cover here, guys, in a short period of time. So I'm going to try to buzz through a lot of it. But as I mentioned earlier, we're going to give you guys an opportunity to work with Anastasia and I in the Podcast 100 Challenge this year. And we're going to help you with all of these things. So everything we're going through in the Podcast Success Blueprint, we are going to be going through over the course of the year, helping you build these songs, helping you figure out what your audience is, where to find those people, all that kind of stuff. So today is just a big overview of it. All right. So section number 2, research. Okay. So we want to look at who speaks to your audience. And first of all, in phase 1, we figured out who is your audience. And for Suzanne, we figured out that, she has 2 different audiences. She's got the educators and the social workers and people that she's helping certify into her anti-bullying modality. But then she's also got the parents of the kids who are being bullied or are bullied. So 2 totally different audiences. So you really need to figure out which one you're going to speak to on your podcast guesting. And it could be different than when you go and have your own show as a podcast host. And that's totally fine. So
Michelle, we're not seeing your slide properly. We're just seeing the top part.
Hold on a second. Okay, let's see. You guys see it now? Is that better? Okay.
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Okay, perfect. All right, got it. Thank you for that. All right, so who speaks to your audience? And one way that you can tell who else speaks to your audience, think about someone who you admire, who is kind of in the same world as you, maybe a few steps ahead of you in business. Go take their name and go to Google, write their name in plus podcasts, and you're going to pull up all the podcasts that they've been on. Or you can go to listennotes.com and see all the podcasts they've been on.
Ooh.
Technically, or probably, they've done a little bit of research to figure out what shows are aligned with their message. So they might have already done some of the work for you. So you can just also reach out to those shows. And you can even reach out to those shows and say, hey, I know you've had so-and-so on their show. They speak about this in our space, and I speak about this, and I can take that conversation to this level, right? That shows that you've done some research, you've done a little bit of digging, you know what their show's about, you know who their audience is, and you know how you can add value. Another thing you want to do is go to a program called Listen Notes. And I'm going to take you there right now because it is a super cool program that you can do a lot of sneaky research in here. And so I can look up and find all sorts of podcasts and also But what for this particular training is for podcast guesting. So why I want to go to listen notes to find out for podcast guesting is I want to say, okay, maybe I have a similar audience to Jenna Kutcher. So let's see, Jenna Kutcher. She's a very popular podcaster in the space, and I'm going to go to here and it's going to ask me all these silly questions about bridges. Only does this when I'm live. It never does this when no one else is watching. Okay, here we go. So Jenna Kutcher, this is her own show, Gold Digger. So if we went to the filters and we excluded her own podcast, then we can actually go and I think you'll be able to do that here. Okay, live filter. Okay, so now we should be able to see the shows that she's been on. So it's not going to pull up every single one of her episodes. So you can see that she's been on this show and this show and this show and this show and this show. So now this gives me a good idea that if she is the same kind of expert as I am and she's on all these shows, chances are I should also go on these shows too. Okay. And the cool thing about Listen Notes is you can come here and you can see how this show says it's 0.5%. So what does that mean? So out of 2.9 million podcasts out there, this podcast sits in the top 0.5% of all shows, which means that this is a pretty popular show. It might be a little bit harder to get on this show than it would be to get on another show that's maybe not listed. Maybe this one's in the top 3%, so a little bit easier to get on this show. Okay, so and you always want to get on shows that are in the top 5% or higher because those are the shows that have an audience. Okay, and so typically if a show is in the top 5% or higher, you're looking at anywhere from 500 to 1,000 listeners in the top, if it's in the top 10% per episode. Okay, so that's kind of some math there. So the top 20, basically, if you're in the top 10% of shows there, you have listeners, you have an audience, and those are the shows that you want to get on. And if you have a show, you want your show to be in there. Okay. So I can show you here, the Amplifyou podcast is not going to show up now because I changed the way it's spelled on here. I just messed myself up with the way our podcast. So as you can see, these are all the people that have been on my podcast as a guest. There we go. So I just changed the name of my podcast. So it kind of messes up the algorithms here. Okay. So you can see that we have a global ranking of top 5%. So that means our podcast out of 2.9 million podcasts is in the top 5%. So yeah, you can look up shows on there and see where they are in the ranking when you want to go and get on them. So again, not wasting your time being a podcast guest. You want to make sure those shows are in the top 5, top 10% at least of all the podcasts out there. All right. Oh, thanks for reposting the podcast success blueprint. So the PDF is in the folder there, guys, or in the chat there. And no, that is a free account. So free account on Listen Notes. All right, back to our podcast success blueprint. I'm going to share it with the screen again. Is this making sense for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right. Here we go. All right, so next thing we want to do is get listed on some directories. So there's lots of great directories out there you can put yourself onto. There's podcastguest.com. There's one called guestio.com. There's one called Podmatch, which is one that we really like. And that's the one we use with our clients that we do the bookings for them. So get yourself listed on directories. And then it's easier as a guest. So when you're on a guest directory, they're going to ask you all those things that we just shared with you on that sheet as a guest expert. So all the same sort of questions, like what are your social media followings? How many shows have you been on? What other shows have you been on? And if you haven't, don't worry about it. Just say, you're a newbie. That's totally fine. Everyone's got to start somewhere. but they want to know who your audience is, who you speak to, all those kinds of questions that you would have answered already when you're putting together your media kit. Okay, so a couple of other things in the research phase is that you want to look for on iTunes, like take a look and see, I shared with you how to look for someone else that's got similar expertise as you. Next thing you want to look for also is go to iTunes and see how many reviews and ratings the show has. That will also help you kind of figure out if the show is kind of out of your league for pitching, or if it's like, you know, in a start small, start with the shows that, you know, have under, I would say start with the shows that have under 100 reviews or ratings on iTunes, and then work your way up. So the ones that are going to be in that 1% or 0.1% are going to have more than 100 ratings on iTunes, which means they're going to be a little bit more challenging to get on, a little bit more hoops. And sometimes that might be a warm introduction that you're going to need to get through the gatekeepers of those shows. All right, phase 3. So I'm just going to pause right there for a second. We've gone through phase 2. We're not going to get through all the phases today, but we're going to get through as much as we can and give you the high level of everything so that you get as much as you can out of this today. So just want to quickly stop for a second and see if you guys have any other questions around the research part of it. So we're on the research phase. Nice to see so many faces here now, guys. Hello, everyone. When I actually stop my sharing, I can actually see you guys. Hi. All right. So anybody else have any questions, or we're just going to keep moving on? All right. Perfect. What I want to do before we move on, I want to put you guys in a quick breakout room because I want you guys to get to know each other. We did a round robin at the very beginning of the call, but not a lot of people were here at that time. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to jump into a breakout room. What you're going to do is say your name, who you are, and what kind of podcast expertise, or sorry, let's rewind that. What your name is, what is the audience you want to speak in front of for a podcast guesting, okay? And whether or not you have a podcast yourself, because we're going to do a little bit of matchy here. So if you have a podcast, awesome, go up to the top right of your corner of your screen right now, and you can go down to renaming yourself. And beside your name, if you're a podcast host, put an H. If you're a podcast guest, put a G. And if you're both, you can put H and G. And then you can rename yourself so that we know when you go into a breakout room, you're talking to someone else, you know, if they're a podcast guest or host. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. I want you guys to go real quick through your introductions. You get to meet each other real quick. So I want everyone to leave here without at least a new introduction. All right. So here is my breakout rooms. Here they are. Okay. Got them. We'll be real quick here, guys. And then we're going to get back because we have tons more content to go over. All right. So putting you in breakout rooms. Here we go. See you back here in 5 minutes. So I'm just going to press record again. All right, so Catherine had a great question just as you guys were coming back from the breakout rooms. So she's asking, so now Catherine, you're speaking from a podcast host standpoint. So we are talking about being guests on other people's shows today. So a little bit out of context for some people, but just I'm going to give you the quick Cole's Notes version of it. Is so you're promoting a show that's coming up and then it's releasing, and then you're promoting a show after it's been released. So are you doing a recording of a Facebook Live? Is that why you're doing it that way? Do you record as a Facebook Live first?
I've got 2 podcasts. One is a live broadcast, yes, and one is that I record it and I put it on Spotify and Apple and the Simplecast. So I still try and bring some hype to the shows.
Yeah, well, that's great. So yeah, you're doing promotion. So typically what we find is that people don't start promoting an episode usually until it's already out. So that's maybe perhaps one of the extra steps that you're taking, but I can see why you're doing that if it's live, because you do want people to attend live and watch it live, right? And so and then you're promoting a replay. Well, guess what? The great thing about after the show's already been live is you can promote it as many times as you want. And actually, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit in the follow-up phase, but a lot of people actually will go back out and send a podcast episode to their guests several times over the next few months to promote it out, to just give it an extra boost. And so leaving space in there for when you're on shows as a guest too, I think is great. And I don't have a simple little trick for that. All I can say is that it doesn't have to be super like on time, because a podcast episode will go out and you can promote it next week, you can promote it this week, you can promote it 10 weeks from now, and it's still relevant and it's still good. And not everyone's seen it yet. So don't be afraid of like re-promoting the episodes that you've been on guests on over and over again over the course of the year. And hopefully, no, that doesn't really answer.
I'm just trying
100%.
to prevent some oversaturation,
Yeah.
like, and I put it in the newsletter. So there's other content in there as well too. And then one time I went, here's some guests coming up, 1, 2, 3. And then they kind of overshadowed some of the content. So maybe I'm just looking at my list and because I've changed what I'm offering now. So I'm looking for a change of followers as well, right? Because some people don't want to listen to podcasts. They want the content that I've been putting out for 10 years, right? So there's this balance of I guess it's saturation is the question.
Yeah. And I mean, a summary of all of them in one newsletter for the whole month is great. I think that's a good idea. And you can have that maybe as a specific special one that you send out. I think that's a cool idea. And for your podcast listeners, you can always do that in an audio format too.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. So how was the breakout rooms for you guys? Met someone cool? Who met someone cool in the breakout room? Awesome. I love it. All right, we're going to dive back into the content because we've got so much to cover in the next little while. And I know you're going to feel like it's like a bit of a fire hose that we're giving to you today, but just know that this is a great space to be in. You're in a great time to be a podcast guest. There are so many podcasts out there. And know that if you want to join us in our 100 podcast challenge, we are going to go through this in much greater detail, hold your hand through it, and actually help you get booked on 100 shows in 2023. That's what we're all about here. And I'll share with you with that before I let you go today. So diving back into our 5 phases of podcast guesting here. All right. So we're in the phase 3, getting booked. Okay, we've talked a little bit about our media kit earlier. So I showed you that really great format that you can use that will help you just organize all your content. Above anything else, like you said in the description of this training, what if Brene Brown or Brenda Burchard called on you and said, hey, let's go and do a podcast interview? Do you know where all that stuff is? I sure as heck did not. I lost a lot of opportunities, caused me a lot of stress, looking around, scrambling for all that stuff. Like, where's my bio? Where's the right headshot? Where's this? Where's that? Okay, so the idea of putting together a media kit is that you don't have to make it look fancy like the one I showed you on the website, although that's great. You can just put it all together in a Dropbox folder or have it somewhere where it's ready so that when the opportunity arises, you have it already. Our podcasters are going to be sending you questions and forms to fill out in order to get on their show. They do that because they need all that content in order to promote you, in order to make media graphics, in order to make quote cards, in order to promote your episode on social media, just like Catherine was talking about. A lot of work goes into that for the podcast host. So your job as a podcast guest is to show up and be prepared and have all that content for them when they need it, so that they can do a good job of promoting you. Okay, so that's your media kit. You want to have all those things ready in there. Testimonials, as seen on, your book, your free gift, your cover art, or your headshot, not cover, headshot, and your bio. So those are some things that you want to put into there. Okay. And then another thing you might want to do is put together kind of like a pitch template. And so I wouldn't necessarily send this pitch template, but it's just kind of like a summary of like positioning yourself as an expert, knowing that you're going to be the guide who helps people in the episode, and kind of a little bit about your story, but more so about what you can do for the audience. So what are the things that the audience are going to learn from having you on, from listening to an episode that you're on as a guest? Okay, so that's huge for the podcasters to see that. They want to know, what value are you bringing to my listeners? Because I've worked really hard as a podcaster to gather all these listeners. I don't want you to come on and not give any value, like the story I shared with you a little while ago. I want you to come on and give tons of value to my audience. It makes me look good as a podcast host, and it makes my audience go away going, wow, I want to connect with that person further, right? Okay, so when you're trying to get booked on a show, the worst thing you can do is send a pitch email that says, me, all about me. This is what I do. This is how great I am. We do not care about any of that. What we care about is, what can you do for our audience? How can you add value to what we talk about? How can you, like, maybe you've gone back and looked at some of the episodes and you've seen, hey, you haven't talked about this, and I'm an expert at this, and I would love to, teach your audience more about XYZ, just make it all about the audience when you do finally reach out to a podcaster. So we have this little get notice formula. Okay. So the first thing you do is you go to a podcast. Once you've gone through phase 1 and 2, and you've identified they've got the right audience for you, you've identified that they have a show that's kind of, reachable for you. You want to go and leave them a review. So leave them a review, say something really nice about their show. Go listen to an episode first before you leave a review, so it's really genuine. And you can leave a proper review, and then go follow them on all the social media platforms you possibly can. Okay, so head on over and follow them on every platform that they're on, and then start engaging with them on these platforms. So we have a really, really cool app that's coming out in the next little while, where you're going to be able to zero in on the social media of only these people, which is going to be super cool. So you'll be able to engage with the people whose shows you want to get on, and not see all of the other social media crap that's out there. Just focus on those. It's called like the Dream 100. So you want to engage. So leave comments and leave feedback, and, engage in their communities, on their Facebook groups, or in their social media, and then connect. Okay. And by connecting, I mean, first look and see if you have any mutual connections. How great is that to actually be able to get a warm introduction? Or maybe you're in the same Facebook groups, or maybe you're in this coaching program together, and you would have known that already unless you did the research here in this phase 3. Okay. So phase 3 is super important, and it's a step that many people skip, and it's why they don't get booked on the right shows, and they don't make the type of return on your time spent, and the growth in your business, is because we've skipped a few steps here. Okay. And you wonder why pitches and emails go unanswered. Is because people are too busy to read something that's all about you, and not about them, and how you can make their audience wow, right? And I get pitches every day that say that. So, and it sounds mean to say that, but podcast hosts really care about what their audience is going to get from you being on their show. All right. So any questions on that? I'm just going to stop real quick, see if we got any quick questions on that part. All right, we got lots more to cover, so I'm going to move quickly through the next little part here. All right. Perfect. No questions? You guys are great. Okay, here we go. Phase 5 or phase 4 is the interview. Okay, so here's an important piece. If you do not say the right things on an interview, you're not gonna captivate the audience, which then they're not gonna reach out to take you up on your call to action, and then they're not gonna come back into your world. Therefore, going out and getting on 100 podcasts in the year was a big waste of time. And that's not what we want, right? We want you to go onto a show, be captivating, be inviting, and be yourself, and share with the audience some amazing content that makes them go, wow, this person knows speaking my language. They know exactly what I need. I want to work with them. I want to see what else they have, and I'm going to go follow them. My friend Evans Putman, he comes to some of our calls with a stack of books this high that he's bought off of podcast interviews. He's heard this author speak about their book on their show, and he went and bought their book. So people do take action when it's that compelling, right? Okay, so how do you be that compelling? You speak in media bites. So media bites are short, concise pieces of content. Think about tweetables, right? Tweetables. One thing that we say at Amplifyou is that if you're not embarrassed by your first few episodes, you waited too damn long to put your podcast out there in the world. Okay, so that is one of our media bites that gets quoted all the time. In fact, I had a client, she sent me that printed out and framed of me saying, because I said it on her podcast. So those are things that get repeated, and those things that get repeated, and that's how things end up in social media or on media outlets. We're speaking in media bites, right? So chunk up all your content in really concise media bites. Another trick here is to have 3 things. 3 is an easy number to remember. 3 is an easy way for me as a listener to feel like I'm getting value because they gave me 3 things that were really important. And that's part of the superstar guest formula. So our superstar guest formula is all about crafting your message in a way that makes you the guide, sharing it with some stories, sharing it with some media bites, and moving the podcast listeners to your amazing call to action, which is going to help them deepen the relationship with you and move into your world. Okay, and then you're going to show up and be an awesome guest. I have 10 quick little tips that I'm just going to give you of how you can be an awesome guest. And this is out of this context of this page that I'm on at the moment, but it was something that I saw this morning. And I was just like, oh, that would be really good to share. And these are things that you may have already heard me say, but I just thought I'd bring it up on the screen and share it with you really quick, because I think these things are maybe sometimes are overlooked when people are going on as a guest. All right. So can you guys see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, great. 10 tips for being the best guest. Number 1, review the show, which means you've listened to it. So number 1 and 2, listen to the show, review the show, and find a way to incorporate something from a previous episode that they've recorded into your current interview. The guest or the host will be like, wow, amazing. You have listened to my show, right? I would never believe how many people don't listen to the show before they come on as a guest, right? Okay. And what if I said something, or what if I asked every single guest the same question, and I asked you that question and you didn't listen to an episode, so you didn't know that question was coming, and you didn't know the answer for that question, you'd feel pretty silly, right? So make sure you listen to the show, review the show, incorporate something from another episode, speak in media bites, have value-packed content. You want people to leave that interview going, wow, that was a lot of great information. Okay, compliment the host, compliment the audience. Be short, succinct, and impactful with your words. Do not lead them on a 20-minute journey of your story because you're going to lose them right off the gate. And this is a side note tip for podcast hosts. Don't ask, tell us about how you got here today as your first question, because that leaves the door open for the guests to take the show on the road, and you never know where it's going to go. So as a podcast guest, I know no matter what question the podcast host asks me, I know what I want to say, and I know how I'm going to say it. And it doesn't matter what question they ask me. I have an agenda and I have a route that I want to take them on in this episode. And it doesn't matter what question they ask me, because I can find a way to incorporate all those answers into whatever they ask me, so that I'm in control of how my message is coming out, no matter how good or bad the questions the host asks me are. I think that's pretty awesome. Anyone else think that's awesome? It's awesome to be in that control, to know that no matter how good or bad an interviewer is, you still get an incredible interview for that audience. Okay, so back to number 7, be personable. Okay, and for a podcast host, again, I'm going to flip it back to a tip for a host right here, because I know we have lots of hosts in this room. Make your guests laugh before you press record and have a little bit of banter back and forth so that they feel comfortable. They've taken down their walls. They're ready to get going now. You've had some fun. You've laughed a little bit. That will allow the guests to be personable. Smile, because even through audio, the audience can hear you. Okay. And my favorite one, which is phase 5, which we're going to get to in a minute, is follow up. The big FU is if you don't follow up, and follow up stands, FU is the acronym for follow up. So follow up and thank the guests, thank the host for having you on the show. Thank you for taking the time to have you on their show. Okay. So those are just a few of my 10 tips for being the best guest possible on a podcast. All right, I know we're running close on time, but I want to get there as quick as we can. And with PDF, Sandra, you're looking for the PDF of the top 10 guests. Okay, I'm going to see if I can add that in the chat. Here, how about if I put it on the screen? Can you take a screenshot of it? That might be helpful. Okay, I'll just pop it back up on the screen again right now, in case you didn't get a screenshot of it. Otherwise, I've got to upload it to Drive first and then, okay, ready? There you go. So take a screenshot if you like. There we go. All right. Back to our podcast guest success formula. And we've got last two to go through real quick. That is, or the last one to go through, and that is the follow-up. Okay. And as I just said a second ago, the follow-up is a big FU if you don't do it, but a follow-up stands for FU, is the acronym follow-up. So follow-up is sending a thank you. One podcaster that I interviewed on my show, she said, I use the podcast as a Rolodex. I'm creating a Rolodex of people that they're my first people to go to when I need speakers. They're my first people to go to when I can refer someone to, and because they've all been my guests on my show. And so she's collecting a list, and she's making a list of all the people that have been her guests. So that should not be the first or last time that you speak to that person on the podcast interview, right? It's the beginning of a relationship. It's not the end of a relationship, or it's not like a transaction. You want to treat it as a relationship. And that relationship, even just one of those relationships, it added 6 figures to my business last year of having a guest on my show. It led to a collaborative project, which led to 6 figures. So you never know where that's going and what people don't use the podcast as a tool enough. So I know we're talking about being a guest on the show, but you have the same power as a guest to start creating that database of the hosts that you've reached out to, and who can you refer to them. So can you give them what's important to the podcast host? More guests? Sure. Maybe more clients in their business. What is important to them? And can you refer some people to them? Can you promote them? Promote the heck out of the episode. And you wouldn't believe how many people don't. So make sure you are promoting that episode when you go live out there, and not just once, many times throughout the year. You can reach back out to the host and be like, hey, I was just promoting your episode again that we did back in June. Here it is out again on my social media, and I tagged you in it, right? They'd be very grateful for that, for sure. So was that a lot of information? How are we feeling about that, guys? Everyone good? Okay, good. I don't want to overwhelm you with you so much information, but there's a lot of things that I think people are doing wrong out there in the podcasting world when it comes to being a podcast guest. And I feel like it's becoming a big waste of time for a lot of people. So it's not about getting on as many shows as you can. It's about getting on the right shows and in front of the right audience to then grow your business. So would you guys agree that if you got in front of 100 podcast audiences this year, let's just say each of those audiences have an audience of 1,000 people, that's 100,000 people. Can you imagine how different your business would be at the end of 2023 once you got your message in front of 100,000 people? Yeah, I think that's pretty incredible, right? So as you guys mentioned, as some of you heard me introduce Anastasia earlier, Anastasia, I don't know where you're at, there you are. You can give a wave. We came up with this idea earlier this year to do a program called the 100 Podcast Challenge. And I've been kind of alluding to this whole call, because all the pieces that we just went through, we're going to dive deeper and deeper into these pieces. We're going to help you create all these pieces that we've talked about today, and we're going to help you get booked on 100 shows this year. So now this isn't us going out and filling out the application form for you and booking you on the show. I do have a guest booking service for that. And if you're interested in that, just reach out to me for a totally done for you service. What this is the accountability. And this is us giving you some hot leads of shows that are looking for guests that you can go and apply for. And this is us holding you accountable of getting your media kit ready, giving you the templates for that, and getting you guys going on where to get listed, where to find the right shows, where to make sure you're aligned with the right audience. We're going to have coaching twice a month. We're going to have accountability calls twice a month, and you're going to get on 100 shows by the end of the year. That's really only 2 weeks. That's pretty doable. So if you guys are up for that, I'm going to get a yes in the chat. You guys want to hear about that? Okay. So this program could be a pretty high ticket program because you're getting tons of really cool things in this program. But we decided that we didn't want to make it a high ticket program. We thought we would make it something that is affordable to everyone and something that you can do alongside of your business to help you grow your business. That's our goal at the end of the day, to help you grow your business. Anastasia, do you have the link there by any chance? Lost it out of my head here.
Grab it in a sec.
Okay, perfect. So what you want to do is take a look at what we're offering today. It starts January 3rd. It's a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a great time. We're going to be a group together going through this together. You're going to be able to talk to each other. You're going to be able to communicate with each other. Guess what? You're going to be able to interview each other. Some of you guys are hosts that are looking for guests, which is great. Some of you are guests looking for hosts. We are also, Anastasia and I are going out there looking for guests for you. We're going out there looking for people who are looking for podcasts for you. Okay. And we're going to make it really easy for you to get booked. All right. And we're going to hold your feet to the fire to make you get on 100 shows in the next year. So it's the 100 podcast challenge. Okay. So we're going to transform your business by getting you on 100 shows in 2023. Okay. So we're going to help you get listed in this directory, a media kit directory. We're going to bring you hot leads. We're going to give you coaching and accountability. We're going to teach you our superstar guest formula in depth so that you know how to incorporate those stories, like we mentioned, those media bites, how to incorporate that all together so you have a plan no matter what question the host asks you. We're going to teach you our get noticed formula in a little bit more depth than what we went over today. We're going to help you get organized. That is Anastasia's strength. She's going to help you keep it all together in organization. She is incredible at business services and behind the scenes and keeping business owners like ourselves really organized. And I may have alluded to before that with the Elite package, you're going to get access to our new app that's coming out in a couple of weeks. This app is designed so that you only see the 100 podcasts that you're focused on, and you can message them for social media through there too. So this is our Podcast Guest Pro package, comes at $97 a month, guys. So pretty awesome. You can join us for $97 a month. You get the 2 times accountability calls, the 2 times a month group check-in calls. You get 2 tickets to our Podcast Success Blueprint Live, which is an extended version of what you have today. You get recordings of the Get Media Ready package class that we have. You have a Canva template for the media kit. And you get to join us every month for the next year to get you booked on 100 shows. Okay, if you want to up that and you want us to do the speaker sheet for you, we can do that and get listed on the Amplifyou website, which then we promote at our Connect and Collaborate calls every week. And you're going to also get monthly emails with hot podcast leads emailed to you so that you get a leads on there. That's $197 a month. And if you want to up that even more, $297, you get access to our new app. Plus, you get interviewed on a podcast in our network. You get a personalized contact information with 30 podcasts on there. And we will just make this year an amazing year for you to transform your business. So I'm going to leave it at that. We've got the link in the chat. If you guys have any questions, you'll know if this is for you and you'll know if this is not for you. And either way is totally fine. If you guys are out there and you're listening and you're like, I want to be a podcast guest, this is amazing. This is the easiest way to get going with our support. Our podcast guest booking packages for booking you on 20 shows starts at $4,000. So that's quite a big difference between this service that we're offering you and a done for you service, which is the next option. Okay. But if the done for you service is for you, just reach out. I'm happy to support you on that. Now, if you're thinking that this is a great idea and you want to do this, but you also want to launch your own podcast, I'm going to make you a deal right now. And Anastasia doesn't even know about this. But if you also want to launch a podcast in 2023, especially in the first quarter, I will gift you this entire program if you become a podcaster in the first quarter of 2023. So just let me know, reach out to me. I don't have a link for that or anything like that. But let me know in the chat, or if you want to do that, then we can talk about it. Okay. And I know some of you already have I already have calls booked with over the next couple of weeks. That is something that we will discuss on your call if you want to do both. I think the best way to grow your business is doing both, because having your own podcast, you have your own platform, you have control of that. Being a guest on the other show is the best entry way to it, the best way to get going. And the transformation in that was incredible. All right. So any questions, guys? I'm happy to see in chat. I know we're at the end of our time. Anastasia and I can answer any questions you guys want, if you guys have on podcast guesting. Now, can you guys let me know in the chat, was this good information today? Did you guys get some good content out of it, or is anything I'm missing? Is good? Okay. Good. Just want to make sure that you guys got some great content out of there. Awesome. Nobody? Susan, you had a question?
Yes, I was thinking that, I'm sure that going for 100 podcasts is great for some people, but it would be far too much for me. Is there any sort of pared down methods that, so I'd be more focused, but also I have to have room for all my other projects?
Sure. Yeah. So here's the thing. If you don't want to get on 100 podcasts, that's totally fine. You just let us know what your goal is in the program. If your goal is to get on 30 podcasts, awesome. We are going to hold you to the fire and get you on 30 podcasts. And you're right. For some people, 100 might be like totally crazy. And that's totally fine. So whatever your goal is, we will help you get to that goal. Yeah.
Because my mission is really to get what I have to offer out to the maximum amount of people.
Right.
But that would, perhaps it's quality, not quantity of podcasts that I'm looking for.
Right. And once you get on 30 shows that are really well aligned and you see that momentum boomeranging back into your business, you're like, heck, I want more of those. Forget everything else, all the other projects I have going on. This is how I'm going to grow my business. And that's the only way I'm growing my business in 2023 is getting on other podcasts. That's the only way I've grown my business in 2022. So I'm going to continue on that path because I see the results from it. So it might just take you getting on some aligned podcasts, getting those results and getting that confidence in what you're doing. And then you'll be like, yeah, hey, I want more of these, or, hey, I'm good with the 30. That was great. So whatever you want to do is totally fine with us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem. And guys, I'm going to put a book a call. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong link. I'm trying to put a book a call link in the chat here too. If you guys if you're not sure and you want to book a call, that's totally fine. We are happy to jump on a call with you too.
Someone was asking for the slide deck link.
The slide deck link, the PDF that we had. So there is a PDF in the chat here. We can totally put the PDF in there. It is a good question, Suzanne. It is in US dollars. It's set in US dollars right now. But if you're Canadian and you would prefer to pay in Canadian dollars, I can give you a different link so that you can pay in Canadian dollars. That's not a problem. Yeah, thanks, Anastasia. Awesome. Anyone else have any other questions? You guys are awesome. So nice to see so many of you guys. Sandra was just on my podcast last week. Michelle, it's been a long time. Nice to see you. Marty, so great to see you. Phyllis, I just saw you in person in LA a few weeks ago. So weird to see you behind the screen again. So great to see you guys. Nice to meet you. Marilla, Virginia, Susan, Leslie, Linda. All right. Anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, we'll call it a wrap for today, but happy to answer questions. All right, no questions. Maybe we covered everything then.
So I have a question. So how do I book a call with you, Michelle?
Oh yeah. So Linda, I'm going to email you right after this. I'm free after if you want to chat in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to do that this afternoon or do you want to do it another time?
I can do it right after this.
Perfect. Okay. So give me about 15 minutes and then I'll email you a link. Okay.
Yes, you can crash.
All right. You guys, Marla, you got a question?
This is Leslie. I
Hey,
saw
Leslie.
the link earlier, but when we went into breakout rooms and came back, I couldn't see any more of the previous chat.
Oh, okay. So you're looking for the PDF of what I was sharing on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if you scroll back a couple of comments, it's right there.
Shared it a
Podcast
couple of
guests.
times since then, Leslie. So if you scroll back in the chat, you'll find it.
Yeah.
Okay,
right
great.
there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. All right. Okay, guys, well, have a great rest of your day. Fabulous to see you guys all. You're welcome. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.